Welcome to the Grande Bouffe,
The Big Feast.
with myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Cole, for this very special episode of the Grande Bouffe.
How meta can we be on the Grande Bouffe?
Pretty much this is as meta as it can get.
I think so. This is the end of the year, and it's time where we give it all away. Our big gift to our listeners is that we will talk about the movie that inspired the name for our podcast.
This is where I find out what podcast I've been on this whole time, and I'm really wondering about its trajectory, about my gastrointestinal health. What's going on, man?
Well, we should talk about how we came up with the title for the podcast, because I'm not going to expose the horrible title that was my first attempt, which you thankfully shot down immediately.
I don't even remember it, so we're all in
good.
luck.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I don't want you to remember it. And so, but we were on the phone, and I had just watched.
Two dudes watching moves.
I had just watched this movie. Yeah, drinking beer, watching a movie, and I had just watched this movie a few weeks before our conversation, and then while we were on the phone, I was flipping through a giant book of cinema, and lo and behold, I turned to the page that had Le Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, on it, and I said it, and as soon as I read it, you agreed, and that was it.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it. I liked the description, and at some point the theme song of it, I listened to, and we thought that would be, of theme songs that you can get, it's a pretty perfect one for us, and to, there's definite spoilers that you can get with this movie, but let's just say it's about consuming in mass, and in a way in which you can think a lot about the societal ramifications of consuming things, and that's kind of what we're doing. I think maybe with a little more self-awareness than these guys. I hope. I
don't know. I think these guys are all pretty self-aware. There are four Frenchmen. We don't really know how they have come to be friends, but it's evident that they've been friends for a long time, and they each come from very different backgrounds. But before we get to that, we should talk about the beer, because you can't have a feast without beer, and Mike has brought the beer this week.
I picked one. It's really just based on its name, and I like Belgian beers. This movie's in France, and some of the characters are Italian, but I brought in some Belgian for it, but I love the name. I think it's appropriate because it's La Fin du Monde, and it's certainly the end of the world in certain ways, in this French classic of, it's kind of, I don't know, something about it is almost like, I want to say like it's a Mad world, which I'll go into more, but it's like that meets like Tampopo. You seen that movie?
Yeah, there's a little hint of surrealism in the movie.
Definitely,
just a hint. It's a social satire for sure, and we'll get into it more. But La Fin du Monde is a 9% alcoholic Belgian style triple ale, hence the high ABV on it. And let's just see what they say, if they say anything. La Fin du Monde recreates the style of beer originally developed in the Middle Ages by Trappist monks for special occasions. A golden ale, mildly yeasty, with notes of malt, fruit, and spice, followed by a smooth, dry finish. Well, I'm all about the dry finish.
I think 2016 deserves nothing more than a dry finish.
Definitely. All right. So here we have a little toast to the Grande Bouffe, the big feast.
We can get better chink than that.
Yeah. Well, you got to hold it from here.
Oh well, yeah. There we go.
That's how you do it.
Nope. Okay, hit the top.
All right. Well, don't spill it. There's too much liquid in it. You're not gonna get a good sound with so much liquid.
All right, we'll just we'll do it in post.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you think. Here we go. Here we go. We're tasting Le Fin du Monde. Mm.
I like these. I like these. These.
It's got a lot of body to it.
Yeah, I like these light beers. And not like literally a light beer, but one that kind of like bubbles down your throat.
It's
and
got
goes easy.
an apricot. There's something apricot-y about it. I like apricot. Apricot. I say apricot. You say apricot.
Don't tell me what I say.
You know, maybe,
I've probably said.
maybe you say tomato.
I honestly don't know.
Do you say potato?
Have you ever met anyone that says potato?
I have.
They're just like. Do they also work at a Renaissance fair?
And tomato.
I honestly don't know which way I'm going to say that fruit. Do you want to see which way it comes out?
Yeah, say it.
Apricot.
There you go. Apricot.
I didn't know. I probably said that word 3 times.
In your life?
I've never eaten an apricot.
Really? Huh, I've had many apricots.
I'm thinking of it in my head, and I'm thinking of a plum. I don't know what it looks like.
It's a peach-colored plum. It's more like a peach-colored plum.
But it is that kind of like small.
Yeah, it's
almost a fruit kind of thing.
Really, the color of the beer. It's
totally.
It's a beautiful color. It's cloudy, very cloudy. You do not see through the beer.
You know that Belgian bar? I think it closed on like West 4th. Do you know that place?
No.
It's it was very over expensive, but it was a cool little hole in the wall, like very quiet and dark, and they had just mostly just wine and like Belgian beers, Chimay and whatnot. But it went the way of all things in New York, and it's just
here 1 minute, gone the next.
Gone the next.
That's how New York is. And all right, so let's talk about these 4 characters. They're very interesting characters. Marcello Mastroianni,
the pilot,
is the pilot.
He's a pilot,
but he has a problem.
He's
below the waist.
He's got to be dicking.
He's a little impotent.
Yeah.
It's very sad because you could tell this guy has been a great womanizer for much, if not all, of his life.
Do we know right away that he's impotent? I remember it coming up at the end. Is it throughout? Like he clearly has like a sex addiction, but every time he's having sex, does it not work?
I think that's what happens. I think we find out when he takes one of the prostitutes. We'll get to the prostitutes in a second, but he takes one upstairs, and he is not able to perform as it were.
Gotcha.
Very sad. But he looks great in those aviators. He's a very convincing pilot. Marcello.
I feel like impotency is used a lot as a symbol in films, though it's like often I think can be like literally true, but it's almost like such a heavy-handed image for a character being like unable to execute in life that it's almost like too on the nose sometimes.
Well, it's balanced here among 4 characters, and each of them has their own relationship to sex and food, as we find out a lot about through the movie. We should also talk about I believe it's Philippe.
Philippe, the judge.
The judge. He's a pretty influential person in French society. But he lives with his nanny,
his wet nurse,
Nicole, who likes to breastfeed him.
Yeah, he clearly still has a mammary fetish. He's just a tiny boy.
Well, maybe she does. She's the one who's trying to sell it. She's trying to prevent him from going out and seeing any other women because she wants him. So she seems pretty hung up. I think what has happened there is maybe. Maybe she molested him, and they just have, been together all these years.
There's, I think the clinical term for what that relationship is just real fucking weird.
Real, that's the clinic. I didn't know that was the real fucking weird. I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, RFW. Yeah, it's like it's a very like unsettling thing, and I think this is where the social commentary comes quick. Is this is a judge who is, and he comes into the room and he's kind of like a little child, just like spouting lines as if he'd like seen them in a movie, but they are, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, like or like of the court, like I find him guilty and I condemn him to death, and it's very unsettling to think that beneath the robes of the uniforms and people out there, and as we've discussed, it's a pilot and it's a judge, are just little man children who have these like ravenous desires, and one of which maybe goes home to his 60-year-old wet nurse who is still trying to seduce him.
Well, I don't think she's trying. She's been seducing him for a long time. I mean, that I think she's, that it's pretty clear that that's how they roll.
Yeah. But she doesn't want him to go away for the weekend.
She's very possessive.
He does, and he's I think our first sign that this is more than just a bunch of friends getting together for the weekend is that he says to her, "Don't worry, I've given you access to my bank account," which is, I mean, I guess you could just leave her at 20, if you're really just going for a couple of days.
But we get that kind of intro at it for each of for each of these characters.
Yeah, Marcello. Well, no, not Marcello. It's the there's like a TV producer, right?
Yeah, the TV producer, and it's also interesting that all of the actors use their own names. So Michel Piccoli is the television producer who he's very hip, very suave. He's on top of his game. He's whatever. He's for that period of French television. He's the cat's meow. He's got it all on a string.
There's some real 70s happening too with his teenage daughter who shows up with a black man with a giant afro who has, I believe, no lines of dialogue, who she wants her dad to get a job because he's a really good dancer, and then he dances in a way that no one has since like 1974. And
yeah.
So there's definitely something about there's a window into like the sexual revolution is happening,
and it's a black guy, so
Yep.
we get the the social context that these guys they're hip. He's hip.
Right. So it's placing itself in a historical context. I mean, it's also like present day of the film. What was the release date on this? It's 73. When is this?
I'll tell you in a second. I don't. It's not on the DVD box. We've been watching the Arrow video version, which is really nice. It has the DVD and the 2K restored on the Blu-ray. It's 73.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to think this is I think this is the same year as Godfather. Real different kinds of movies. And isn't it Godfather? I think Godfather's 73. I know I was talking about it a bunch last week, but I don't remember anything about it.
Marco Ferreri, the Italian director who caught a lot of hell for this movie. People booed it. I think it showed in Cannes, and people booed it and walked out. People were really disgusted. There's some gross out humor that happens.
Yeah.
That is really way ahead of the Farrelly brothers.
A lot of poopy for the 70s, I'll say that.
And farty.
Well, so we've got two of the characters down. Let's list them out, and then before going too deep, I think jumping into whatever kind of context that you've gleaned makes sense. But who's that? We got our
I think we got
judge.
three. I think we're missing is the chef.
The chef.
The chef.
Who is that's
Ugo.
one of the Ugo is one of the first people we see, and that's our first hint that this is going to be an unusual weekend. We have all these people getting away, and his patron is asking him why he's bringing his like fanciest knives.
He's packing
away for the
his
weekend.
knives that his father had to sell 2 cows in order to buy him these knives, and so he's the cook. He's going to cook for his friends.
So there's something real fun. It's just all these guys. They get together. They got a big house. You
They've
know?
got a huge mansion. It's fenced off.
The pilot's bringing cheese
It's
off
got
the plane. He's getting his flight attendants to carry it for him.
It's got a historic aspect to it. This particular mansion,
Mm-hmm.
and then so there's a school teacher who brings her school children to look at the bench where the poet wrote all of his poetry by the tree.
Hey, you know what doesn't pan out that much is when the Chinese man from the embassy comes and drops off like some sake. That's
Yeah.
like kind of a red herring.
Yeah, that's a red herring.
But it gives this importance to this whole thing, and that there's from like the four corners of the earth you have people coming. Are there 4 or 7 corners in that expression? Why would there be 7 corners? It's 4. 7 seas, 4 corners. These are all things that don't really exist on the earth. Okay.
Well, yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, I guess at one point there were 4 corners and 7
Well, and at
seas.
one time the Earth was flat too.
Well, that's why it had corners.
That's right.
Yeah.
Corners and edges and all that stuff.
Well, so anyway, these guys have brought together the best stuff. They get a meat delivery, and they get a truly ridiculous amount of meat.
And the first thing they want to do is look at some slides of porn while they eat oysters. And they're really diving into those oysters, boy. They are gluttonous. So they decide
they're racing a little bit. The film even like speeds up a little, so it's like a little more competitive seeming. This guy's just slugging down.
But it wouldn't. It
oysters.
would that the house. It wouldn't be complete if there weren't some women around. So they get some prostitutes.
So they get prostitutes. Yeah, and it's the airline pilot who you point out is impotent. Who whatever they're up to this weekend, he wants to make sure that he's getting that fix as well. Like the other guy seemed like content with just hanging out and eating food. He needs that other element of it, and so they all kind of concede in a bunch of prostitutes.
Well, what I like is how Philippe doesn't. He's very uncomfortable about the prostitutes, and especially because he meets the school teacher who the others invite to the dinner, and he's really nervous because he has a crush on this school teacher. Doesn't want her to come to their dinner and see his ragged company with these cheap prostitutes. But the school teacher ends up being really much nastier and naughtier than the prostitute.
Yeah, there's an expression in French. It's DTF, and this teacher is very DTF.
I think that means down to fuck.
Oh, is that not French?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I never. I studied Spanish.
There's a Johnny Thunders album called DTK. I think you can.
Is it kill?
Yeah, down to kill.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. But yes, she's very.
I have a friend.
DTF.
I have a friend. I won't call her out by name on this, but she uses DTF as just like, sure, I'd do that. Like it'd be like, you guys want to get tacos tonight? And she's like, yeah, I'm DTF for tacos.
Well,
which I encourage everyone to use at all times.
All right, Mike. Great.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that caught you up with that?
your girlfriend's gonna listen to this. I don't know. She's gonna want to know more.
Babe, if you're listening, actually tonight I am DTF for tacos. I don't know when this is airing or when you'll hear this, but I'm most likely DTF for tacos.
Okay. All right. Now that we've settled that, so I think it's interesting how these guys present themselves to each other as men. You've got the Michelle character who's doing ballet in there's a little gymnasium in the upstairs.
His place? It kind of seems like he's made it up for himself.
It does. He's pretty comfortable there, and he's doing ballet. He's got his black leotard, and he's doing ballet on the bar.
It's not entirely clear it's his place,
and he's in good shape. I mean,
yes.
this routine has served him well because he's in his mid to late 50s, I'd say.
Yeah, these guys
as most of these guys are.
Yeah, these guys are a little older, and they're all bougie professional people. They seem like they came from money, not just that they've kind of made their own way. They're elites in a sense, you know.
They are all French elites, and and they've got this beautiful mansion, and they've ordered just truckloads of food.
So there's a version of this movie where you just get all these bougie people together, and they're just gonna have a very like elegant time, and then one of them reveals a dark secret, and then they like get at each other's throats, and they realize that they're not so white collar after all, and that they're real men.
What movie is that?
It's not this movie.
No, I know that.
That I don't know what
movie are you referring to? You're just making shit up.
One that this could have been, you know. I'm trying to say it's like you go into this and I'm wondering like when movies have, and here I'll say this movie has a twist, a reveal. So I'm wondering what movie would people think they're watching when seeing this at Cannes when it first premieres? You know, like we're gonna.
I don't think anyone had the closest that I think that you could come to something like this is a Buñuel film. I think something like That Obscure Object of Desire. That's what I would think of it, that I was watching if I was watching this. Is it's Buñuel. You know, the Marcello's got the Bugatti race car that he's trying to restore, which is a pretty funny thing to do on a weekend when you're eating yourself to death.
There you go. That was our reveal. Maybe this was halfway through our podcast. We'll see.
That's one reveal.
So halfway through,
I mean, you're not watching Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, halfway through this movie, what has gone unstated to the audience and to the prostitutes that have shown up or to the teacher is that these four guys have gotten together and they are going to eat until they die. We don't know why. And also, like, the mechanics of it, I'm wondering how they imagine their deaths are going to come. And the movie gets not, like...
Well, they take each other by surprise. So you almost sense that there's a little game of one-upsmanship going on in how they die.
Right.
And it's shocking when the first death occurs. It takes everybody a step back.
Is it Marcello, the airline pilot, that dies first?
I believe so.
I think he kind of pushes out. He freezes to death, basically, right? I mean, is
in the car?
Would that count?
But he's trying to take off. It almost seems like he's trying to escape. That he's changed his mind. He doesn't want to do it, and he thinks he can make a getaway.
We don't know why they're doing it.
No.
You know, there's more to say about it, but it's almost, you know, and they're not just eating. This isn't them eating.
They're enjoying themselves.
They're loving it.
They're really they're delighting in every.
It's not Taco Bell.
In every second of everything that they're doing, the chef makes the flambe, and they just love it.
Are you a foodie, Cole?
I'm not a foodie per se. I like good food, and there's certain things I'm looking forward to. My little trip to California, annual trip to Canada, drink a little more here, to eat clam chowder. I'm a bit of a clam chowder connoisseur.
Yeah.
I can tell you where you can get the best clam chowder in the world. It's at Lulu's Griddle in the Middle in Monterey. It's on the pier.
In Monterey, California?
On the old pier. Yeah, Lulu's. That place has by far the best clam chowder you will ever find.
It's not the food emporium in Union Square.
No.
Because that made me shit my brains out.
See, that's not a good sign.
No.
Not a good sign. And, you know...
But these guys ate such fancy food, and that literally happened to at least one of them.
Well, they're eating so much. They're really just... They're gorging.
Yeah.
They're pegging out.
It's that they don't get too explicit. There's not like a doctor to explain exactly what's happening, but I feel like the filmmaker had some idea of exactly what was happening to them. And these dudes, I guess part of the gross out thing, I wouldn't call this like pure gross out humor. Like it's different than just like a Jackass or like a Farrelly Brothers movie where you have a bunch of fart noises and stuff like that.
No.
It's there are like some of the, I think there's probably the most farts in this movie of any movie I've seen, and I had no urge to laugh at them because you know that these people are in actual incredible pain.
Yeah.
And like they're hilariously long laughs, but it's very dark. And I wonder, Do you know more about its reception? I mean,
I think people were really disgusted by it, and I mean, for sure, it's a black comedy. There's no two ways around it. We're back always me with the genre stuff, but yeah, it's a black comedy, and I think that people were really at the time were really disgusted by it.
yeah. Do you think?
It goes farther than a Farrelly Brothers movie. I would think about something Farrelly. How do you say the name?
It's just Farrelly.
Farrelly. I don't
You're
know.
trying to make it very fancy.
Yeah,
No, they're not that fancy.
Yeah, I'm making them more Italian than they really
No,
are.
I think it does go further because it's also realer. Like when you take that gross out and you have an absurd element to
That's
it.
True.
It's like, yeah, I'm looking at a guy get his balls and stuck in his zipper, but like it's so over the top.
Shout out to There's Something About Mary.
Yeah.
I love the Jonathan Richman stuff in There's Something About Mary.
Is he the singer?
Yeah,
in the tree and stuff.
Yeah.
But when you ground it in this movie, it's a bit absurd and it's hard to totally relate to the characters. But these are real people and like real performances, and so
they really fit French stereotypes of males that you would experience in French culture in this era.
So to see your sort of unweaned judge die eating a giant cake that looks like titties.
Yeah.
Is a bummer, like it's not hilarious. You're not laughing at them. Also not out of like any like deep affection for them. Their backstories are obscure. There's not like development per se. But it's definitely a bleak thing which is being expressed. So what do you think this movie is about? You got any Marxist interpretations of what this is saying about the bourgeoisie?
Well, I think I think it's an indictment of the patriarchy, I guess, is how far you would send it. I don't want to put too fine a point on the whole Bertolucci scandal that happened. It just seems like it happens every few years about Last Tango in Paris. But I think it's the men who have everything that they could want, and of course it's not enough. No matter how much you have, you always want more. And I think for whatever reason, this particular collection of men decided that they had nothing else to offer the world, and so they were going to do the right thing. I think these guys they're committing a French version of seppuku. They've gone too far. They're doing what really Donald Trump's cabinet should do. We're reprobates. No matter how wealthy and entitled we are, we're not adding anything to society, and we're not pleasing ourselves. We're not making ourselves happy. So there's nothing for us to accomplish. There's nothing more for us to do. They're sick of being of having it all.
I mean, isn't it a bummer for something in the early 70s to have such a deep nihilism about consumerism and then just be 40 plus years from there and it's only so much worse?
Mm-hmm.
The economic stratification is that much worse. But even on a grand scheme of things, like people in our tax bracket on a global scale, what are we doing but just eating ourselves to death? And we're not
even doing it with food. You look at
which plenty of people are.
But I'm saying most people in this country don't eat real food.
Right. Oh, it's not. Yes, it's not even food.
It's not actual food. And so, these guys, they've got the right idea. I mean, they've got the fresh meats, the fresh cheeses. They're cooking everything. They've got the good stuff. They're going out on the good stuff.
It's dark to me. I have I'll just say, I don't have fully unpacked my analysis of this film on a large scale. There's certainly some low-hanging fruit in terms of a critique of consumerism, a critique of bourgeois culture just having nothing to
And male sexuality
in
and
male
female
sexuality.
sexuality, and also the influence of the patriarchy over the matriarchy. I think is where this movie heads at the end, and it's a pretty powerful ending. It really leaves you scratching your head. I really like the ending though.
And there's just a abject critique of human nature in itself. From like Philippe, you have a lot of references to. Is it? I think it's one of the characters just always bringing up like a biblical like quotes and like like speaking like Latin about just the inherent sinfulness of people. And I mean, gluttony is one of the seven deadly sins. And I just gotta say, on some level, I'm not a huge like I don't love eating that much. It's like fine. But what I do like is like when I was in Cannes the year we met, I had a 5-course French meal,
Uh-huh.
and
Do you remember where?
I don't remember the name. It was like a hole in the wall. It looked like nothing. I would have
Was it
never.
one of the little restaurants that goes up the hill, or
It
was
was
it?
not up the like kind of towards the mall more than like up the hill to the old
So
part of town.
yeah, more on the Croisette.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff, I could eat myself to death. You know, I can't stuff myself with just like junk food. This sort of like, oh, I'm hungry. I need to fill myself. Like that sort of eating like bums me out. But I kind of get what they're doing a little bit sometimes. And I kind of feel like scared of like it's like giving in a little too much to those fancy things. Luckily, like I'm like always broke, so I don't have to worry about it. But I don't know what I would do if I had the expense accounts of these guys.
Yeah, there's, I mean, yeah, there's so many different things that you can extrapolate for your own personal self about this film and these characters, and where they've been and where they excuse me, where they might go. For all we know, these guys could have all committed terrible crimes for which they could be thrown in prison for the rest of their lives.
And this is some sort of just removing themselves out of guilt.
Sure. I mean, there has to be something that they're all guilty of. Everybody's got skeletons in the closet. I'm sure these guys, all have things, bad things that they've done, but they're presented in such they're so comfortable in their in their beings as men, and I find that really I find that really interesting, that like these guys they're really comfortable with themselves. They're all very self-possessed and
it is interesting. They see each other naked.
confident.
They see each other having sex. They're comfortable with one another. There's like a sort of heightened level of sensuality between them at times. Like you almost thought there were going to be some like homosexual interactions. And
there is, in all fairness, there is some a little lesbian tryst that comes up in the movie with the school teacher.
But all that kind of seems thrown into a light of critique, in a way, maybe, because if everything that they're doing is indulgent and bodily and too much. But one thing that I think unsettles people is what exactly is the POV of the filmmaker? What are we to think of them? It is a very amoral view of these actions, right? There's you feel like there should be something said which is harsh about these people that are so indulgent that the natural progression of the way that they live their lives is just eat themselves to death, literally. But
well, there you go. I mean, I think you touched on it. I think that if you transpose these characters into the Donald Trumps of the world, there you are. There you have it.
it's just consuming and consuming and consuming until there is no more. This sort of like sociopathic, primal thing that you were just like waiting till like a chubby school teacher jerks you off while your friend feeds you like bread pudding to your death. Till
Exactly.
Rince Priebus just baby birds you like
And
the wonderful pastries until your heart stops.
And that's
Well, let's hope it happens sooner rather than later, you know.
And that's how you go out. So I
also feel like that's how I mean, it's also the critique. You can plan it on a certain segments of society, but like, you know, I just feel like the best target, the people who I feel like most have it coming in this critique, is just humanity.
Well, yeah, well that's where it's headed. But you know, I think that there is an element of Fellini in this film. There's a lot of nudity. There's a lot of there's really a lot of lust and admiration for the female form, and you've got Marcello doing his little clown act where he has the makeup on his nose and on his cheeks, and that's a throwback to the stuff that he did with Fellini in films like 8½, and so. And that was the same. So there's a similar. I guess that's what I should have brought up earlier when you were talking about what other filmmakers. This movie is clearly of the Fellini movement.
Yeah, to draw a line from like 8½, was just so happy to indulge in the luxuries of life and to look at the real like
and how empty it ultimately all is.
Yeah, that it's like, oh, you guys, you're just. I mean, it's the most simple thing you could say is like you're just eating yourself to death.
Yeah,
just gorging on the luxuries of life until your heart stops.
It's a beautiful film. It's got gothic elements to it, and it will really give you something to talk about. It's not a great movie to see by yourself. I would say if you're gonna watch this movie, share it with somebody else so you can talk it over, because I think any audience will find things for themselves that we haven't even imagined. But it's a very interesting look at French culture of the early 70s and of male culture and the patriarchy and how women regard men and men regard women. There's a lot to chew on.
If you're gonna watch it with someone else, time it well, so that you don't have a meal or try to have sex immediately afterwards. That could And you know what? If you do those things, check yourself into like a mental health clinic. Just do us a favor. Like that's
Mike, I don't really know what you just said. I'm sure.
I'm saying if you can have like a fine meal after watching this movie, I'm worried about you.
Yeah, this movie probably it will spoil your appetite.
I'd hope.
Yeah,
if you come away being like, you know what, I could really go for.
Yeah, I really would like a big Thanksgiving dinner right now. Yeah, you got trubs.
You know, I had this new French place around the corner. Look at your life.
Or look at your stomach. Yeah. Or look at your waistline.
Yeah, look at your waistline. Yeah, your tailor will thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. Happy New Year, and we look forward to more of Le Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, in 2017.